Welcome to the ArtPeak show. We are an illustration and animation studio creating art in different styles. We've worked on projects for the BBC, Netflix, and many more. And on this show, we are interviewing people from all walks of life to bring valuable knowledge to artists of all kinds. If you would like to work with us, head over to our website at www.studioartpeak.com and contact us. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the show, everyone. My name is Lawrence. Today, our guest is Kobi Degraft-Johnson. Kobi is a self-published author. His latest book is Origami, which is out now, and there are more on the way. You can find him on Instagram. His profile name is K the Author. Tell me about your first introduction into the children's book industry, how you sort of got interested in that.
All right, so funny enough, I wasn't the most avid of readers when I was younger. My sister was, and she always used to have like loads of books on her bookshelf.
Okay.
And from time to time, I'd catch her reading, and I'd go and bother her and say, like, "What are you reading?" Stuff like that. And she'd be like, "Oh, leave me alone. I'm just trying to concentrate." You know, the normal, normal sibling rivalry.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just ended up. I think one of the days she sort of showed me this book, and she was like, "Just try it. Just try a couple of books that I have on my sort of shelf and see which ones you like." And ended up reading a couple of them, and I was like, "Okay." And my dad was an avid reader as well. He loved reading, and so from young, I mean, he showed me Aesop's Fables. Um, and yeah, he showed me sort of and I had a Peter Rabbit collection. I had like loads of different these books that were bought for me, but I never really invested the time in. And then it literally took for me to actually sit down and read them to be like, oh wow, I've been missing out on all of this. And then my dad almost gave me that look of, got you. I told you it would happen. I knew it would happen. You just had to sort of put your feet in the water. So
Yeah.
yeah, that happened. Loved it. Loved books ever since.
What age were you at this point when you got sucked in?
Um, I would say probably about 9, 10, 9, 10.
Mm,
Um, Before then, I dibbled and dabbled. I mean, obviously at school you'd have to read and stuff like that. And it was never something I didn't enjoy. It's just I didn't love it at the same time. It was something I knew I had to do. So
mm.
I got it done. But it wasn't until about, yeah, I'd say about 9 or 10 where I properly fell in love with some of the books and I was like, okay, yeah, this is cool. Because I think the illustrations drew me in as well. Because it's like,
Same.
it's one of those things where it's all right to tell a story, but I want to be able to imagine it as well. And if you've provided some of that scenery, then I'm like, cool. Now I'm fully invested.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the same with me. I'm still not a big reader.
yeah,
But growing up, I loved reading comic books a lot because it had images in them. Like it had images. And at the time, it has to be said that I did like to draw too. So maybe
yeah.
that was what it was for me. So
Do you remember
but
your first comic?
the first comic book that I read,
Yeah.
uh, I can't tell, but I can definitely say it would be something to do with Marvel, at least. So, because those were my first few collections of comic books. I spent pretty much most of my pocket money. I didn't know how to save a budget, but I knew how to save enough money for my comic books.
Do you still read comics now?
No, it's
No.
so interesting how things work. I started off with comic books, but then once I decided, okay, I want to be an artist, my
Yeah.
journey moved away from comic books and went into animation. It's only slowly, funny enough, there was a project that my agent recently sent to me, and it was to do a comic book. I was like, wow, after all these years, I'm finally coming into
Circling back.
this.
I like
Yeah.
that. I like
So,
that.
but yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff,
So
man.
So your sister and your bro and your dad eventually got you into reading
Yeah.
from 10. So did you just was it always after 10 years old you were always hooked in reading?
Do you know what? Again, and you said it earlier. The thing is, call myself a sometimes reader. Like sometimes
Okay.
it depends on the content. Like I'm big on certain genres, and other genres won't particularly see me.
Okay.
Um, and I go through patches. So I try to set myself a target of reading however many books a year. And I've included audio books in that now as well because I
Okay.
tend to drive a lot, so I don't mind listening to stuff when I'm driving.
Mm.
Um, but sometimes it hasn't seemed to work out, depending on what I've got going on, or depending on what type of book. There's certain books I'll pick up, I'll read 10 pages, and I'm like, nah, my spirit isn't. It doesn't want me to read this book right now. I'm just not attached to it. And there's some books that I'll pick up, and within 2, 3 days, it's done.
Wow.
So it's just about finding sort of the balance for me. And I realized that if I go for a while without sort of picking up books and putting them down,
Mm.
then the struggle of actually getting to one and getting through one is so much harder than it needs to be. So it's just about consistency.
Interesting. Are
Yeah.
you are you a fast reader?
Depending on what it is. So like for
Okay.
instance, when I read Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist, I finished that in about 3 days. And
Wow.
revert back to it where I love that book. That's one of my favorite books. There's quite a few that I can read and I'll read it like that. Whereas
Mm.
others, it might take me a bit longer to digest. I started reading a book called Sapiens, which is an incredible book, absolutely incredible book, but it's so dense that
Okay.
yeah, it's so dense that it's taken me over a year to finish this book. And I
Oh,
don't read one book at a time as well, which is probably the problem
wow. That is very interesting. To be honest, I don't draw one project at a time. I usually start a
too.
drawing and
Yeah.
then it's just getting too hard. I'll just leave it. And then maybe like towards the end of the year is when I actually finish it. But
So how many ideas do you have on the go right now?
from the start of the year, I can't count to be honest with you because it's gotten to a point where I've had to I'll just open my iPad and I'll write down the ideas of what I have. And the scribble I'm looking at my iPad. Let me try and bring it. The scribbles might be so rough that it wouldn't make any sense if you actually saw it. So I honestly cannot count. But I also have ideas that I have started working on like since last year and
Okay.
and I haven't finished it. So I have too many to
You
count, to be honest.
know
There's too
what?
many.
No, it sounds like you have a similar sort of process to me. I've tried to stop it actually because when I'm writing, I might have like just this week alone, I've had 6 to 7 ideas and I've noted them down on paper, but I've
Mm,
made a habit of noting them down on paper and saying, I'll come back to you. I have to come back to you because if I start writing now, it's going to detract away from what I've done here and it's going to take me too long. And then I'm going to be, the same time next year with even more ideas and only a little progress. So I've sort of
right.
trained my brain to saying, no, this has to come first. I've almost prioritized them and said, this is a great idea, but it can wait. There's no
Mm.
need for me to rush it now. So
That's
yeah.
that's a great point. There was a time when I think initially there was a time when I was interested in photography, not to become a photographer, but just out of observation.
Yeah.
And the first time I went out and I started taking pictures, I took one picture, and then all of a sudden, this whole new world of possibilities came about. And every little second, I couldn't just walk from here to there without taking. I was like, what is going on? It sounds the same to me. Like, I think I became scared that I would miss the opportunity of taking that photo. Like, I think it's the fear of missing out on this same particular one. But I guess with maturity and time, like I become a lot more comfortable and confident in crystallizing the ideas a little bit more before then noting it down and saying, okay, this is kind of what it's about. I can always come back to it because I know sort of the direction that I am thinking about this idea will go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no,
yeah.
that's good. Yeah, as long as you get the notes down, because the notes are key. Because you don't
Yes.
want to have a great idea and then when it comes time where you've actually got time on your hands and you're like, oh, what was that idea I had? That's the
Yes.
worst. That's the worst feeling. That is the
It's
worst.
a, it's a horrible, horrible one.
Yeah.
It's a horrible one. All right. So wait, I wanted to ask about Sapiens. What is the book about?
So Sapiens is about the history of humans from the very beginning.
Okay.
It's a very, very, very dense book. Very, very dense. I mean, there's
How many
certain parts.
pages?
I can't even remember off the top of my head. I literally gave it to someone to borrow not too long ago as well. They haven't given it back to me because I was like, you know what, I need a break away from this. Uh, You take it. And even they were reading, they were like, wow. I was like, I see why it took you so long because it used to be a running joke with me and them. They were like, "Have you finished the book yet? Finish the book yet?" And I was like, "No, I haven't finished it yet." And they were like,
Right.
"Oh, come on, it can't be that difficult." But then they had it for 2 weeks, and they were like, "Well, yeah, I see exactly what you mean. I see exactly."
Right, right, right.
It's I think it's over 500. I'll have to check. It's quite a
Mm,
thick book, but it's just there's so much knowledge there, so much knowledge, and it's just I mean, some of the concepts they cover there. I mean, they were saying one of them, which I liked, is Ferrari, for instance. In the first few years, the company Ferrari, funny enough, wasn't built on being a car company. It was basically built the money it, it was basically prone to being damaged and needing repairs. And so the main money they made off the first Ferrari model, which were awful, was from repairs rather than sales of the actual car.
wow. Interesting.
Which is yeah, and it's honestly some of the things they covered, I was like, wait, what?
That's crazy.
Insane. Yeah, and just like tribal tendencies of old tribes in certain parts of the world. Um, Really, really interested, definitely.
Hmm. Does reading outside or reading different kinds of book sort of inspire your thinking
100%.
as
I
somebody
think,
who writes?
yeah, the type of person I am, I never I really try to take outside the box quite literally. I think if I stay sort of safe in an area,
Mm,
then I don't think it challenges me enough as a reader and as a writer. It's okay and well and good knowing something quite well, but if that's all you know, then you're limited essentially. And that's the sort of approach I take in life in general. I mean, some people, um, especially when it comes to religion, which seems to be the hot topic on it, some people will say I'm a Christian, but they won't bother to look at what other religions may follow and some of their tendencies. And I think it's almost limiting yourself. I think you can be a Christian, but you can also understand the principles of Muslims. You can understand the principles of Jewish people, and like
mm,
you can look around basically and sort of because I think like I never wanted to be the blind or a victim of the blind following the blind.
right.
So yeah, I'm all about just trying to spread my wings as far and wide as possible and seeing what's out there. And if it doesn't grasp me or doesn't grab me, then it doesn't grab me. But I at least want to see what's out there.
Mm, mm. It certainly helps. I, when I think when I so in my line of work as an artist, sometimes I studied 3D animation, for example,
Yeah,
and even though I primarily do drawings and all of that stuff, my
yeah,
time like making things in 3D like super duper helped in terms of when I am actually drawing out, when I'm painting something, I'm able to think in a more 3D way. It going outside the box definitely or going outside of our comfort zone definitely
yeah,
helps in terms of expanding our ideas.
100%.
It either solidifies what we already know or it what is it? It tests what we know. If it doesn't solidify it, so
And how flexible would you say you are in regards to change? Like if you have sort of a core value, or not necessarily a core value, but a really strong belief, and you encounter something that sort of challenges that belief, are you dismissive of it, or are you like, actually, I should be quite open to this?
I think it depends. I like to think. Oh, most people tend to say I'm quite open-minded, from what I gather. So in terms of beliefs or in terms of values, but in terms of general change, like I have to change from this place to that place,
Yeah.
I don't deal well with it. Like I'm
Oh,
so
okay.
slow. I think yeah. It's taken me a while to admit it, but yes, when it comes to physical changes, it's not easy for me to change. But once
The
I am
first step is,
there, then I'm
yeah.
there.
First step is acceptance though, and you can understand, at least you understand it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
There you go.
A friend, a friend was reading a book about I can't remember. I think she called it Who Moved the Cheese. That's on my
Okay.
list of it's supposed to be about change if
I
I
feel like
remember
I've heard
correctly.
I feel like I've heard about it. Who moved the
So
cheese? Yeah. Go on.
so I haven't read it yet. It's on
Okay.
my to-do list. So but it's
Cheese.
apparently
Mm.
it's meant to be good and change.
I'm sure I've heard of it. Maybe over in a discussion or something, but I'm sure I've heard of it. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. Let's talk about your journey into being a self-published author. Did you do your book self-published, right?
So my first book was actually published by Ex Libris UK. That one's called,
Exzebrush.
yeah, Ex Libris.
How do you
I'll
spell
put the
that?
spelling. Oh, it's XLIBRIS, UK.
X. Okay. I've never heard of them.
And that was my first book. I think it's like, yeah, that was my first book, and that was called The Explorations of a Broken Man. So that was an idea that I had um, while I was at uni. It was just a story that would not go away, literally. While I was trying to do assignments, while I was trying to do everything, the story was just there. And over one summer, I just started writing, and I was like, well, we'll see where this ends up.
Mm.
And then I just kept on writing and kept on writing and kept on going until I had like a solid body of work there. I was like, wow, okay. It was always on my sort of bucket list to write a book anyway.
Okay.
I just didn't know that one would be first. I think that stemmed from younger. So I think from about 15, 16, I sort of developed a passion for creative writing. So that came out in the form of poetry and spoken word as well. And just from feedback from people that had seen or heard some of my writing, they were like, "Oh, you should write a book." And that
Mm.
idea kind of stuck with me. And so when it came round to writing it that time, I sort of had that in my head already. And then it was that sort of fearlessness where it's like, why not? People can write books. Why wouldn't I? Sort of thing. And I almost
Right.
wanted to challenge myself. Um, no one I know was an author, but that didn't phase me. It was like, why I should be the first one then. And I almost
Mm.
challenge the ones in my friendship group who do and can write. I'm like, well, you know, I've done it. It's not, the end of the world. You can do it. The
Mm.
world can hear your thoughts as well. You have important things to say. There's no point of bottling it up and saying, well, it's not for me to do it. Somebody else can.
Mm.
So yeah, that was my sort of journey into self-publishing came a bit later. So after my first book, um, I then sort of discovered Amazon and its benefits and whatnot. And then I decided I'm going to release a series of books. So I released them all via ebook, which was called A Week in the Life. And it's basically a 7-part series, and every day is a book. So it starts on Sunday and it goes to the following Saturday. And it just tells a
Wow.
story. Yeah.
What's that about?
So that story it's funny. It's a lot to encompass. It's basically a group of friends. I would say four, but it's not a group of friends, and basically tragedy ensues the group, and it's them navigating each individually how as a result from the tragedy, and what happens as a result of it. So yeah, it's them dealing with it and then what happens as a result of it. But it's just told from many different perspectives. So for
Okay.
each day, I've tried to tell it from a different perspective, and so the front covers are sort of a link to who the person is I'm telling that story about on that particular day.
Okay. Well, let me understand this. So a situation has happened. There, let's say about how many characters did it happen to?
That's a good question. Yeah, I'll think about five of them. So a
Okay.
situation happened between five people, and then
Mm,
it's just the interpretation of how they've interpreted that event, those five people,
mm.
and then what happens as a result of the event and how it affects them in their life. So, for instance,
Okay.
Sunday
All right.
is a funeral. The first book is about a funeral happening to one of the close friends of one of the characters,
Okay.
and then um, as a result of him deeply feeling the impact of a death of a close friend, it's how he then interacts with the others, which then sets off their stories as well.
Ah,
Yeah,
these are deep, deep, deep stories, I have to say.
yeah, man.
What's
To be honest, go on. What were you gonna say?
what's the age,
So,
what do
so
they call
that
it?
one, the age sort of restrictions or age you would put on that one,
Target.
I would say, yeah, the target audience for that one, I would say it's probably like 11 plus.
11 plus.
I think
Okay.
I put 11 plus for those ones.
Okay.
There's no sort of explicit nature in there,
Mm,
um, but just the, I guess, from the vocab and maybe some of the themes as well, because there is some violence in it. Not explicit violence, but there are sort of elements of violence in it. I would say that that covers the sort of 11 plus.
mm.
Yeah,
Okay. So have you finished,
yeah,
have you released all five of
yeah.
them?
That one's available on Amazon now. That's all done.
Available on
That's
Amazon.
yeah,
As people say at the end of the show, I will, no, in the show notes, I'm going to put a link
yeah, definitely, yeah.
to
So
all of
you
it.
can find that those seven. Yeah, you can find those eight books on Amazon. If you were to type in my name, those eight books would sort of come up on Amazon now.
Okay. Tell the audience your name again, please.
Kobi Degraft-Johnson,
Kobe Degraft.
available on Amazon. Yeah.
It's so funny that up until now, we communicate. I only, to my shame, I only knew you as KD, although until this evening, I was like, surely this is not his first name. There has to be a name. So I had to check through your Instagram
Yeah,
to
no,
see what your name was on your books.
I always put that's my sort of author tag, K the author, and then
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So is there any other project that you're currently working on at the minute?
Well, here we go. Here we go. So I'm
Okay, I know
currently
you have a list of ideas,
yeah.
but one
I
that
have
is
a list.
actually in the oven and is already
Okay,
cooking.
I've got four in the oven at this moment in time.
Okay, I was
One
expecting
one's
one.
finished. Yeah,
One's
one
finished.
is
Okay.
finished. The one I'll talk about is finished, and this is sort of the baby. It's the build up to the. This is sort of my peak, the mountain piece. This is my Picasso, my mural.
Wow.
It's a so it's a fantasy novel,
Mm.
and it's a three-part novel. I finished the first part of it. It is 90,000 words. This is sort of blood, sweat, and tears. This has
Wow.
been 4 or 5 years in the making.
Okay.
And this is the one where I have literally edited again, 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 again. Like the process has been tiresome but and exhaustive, but I love it.
Mm.
This is the one that I sort of want to be the one. So I'm willing to put in the amount of effort necessary.
Mm.
So that's the one I've done. Um, so I've recently finished Origami, which is the book that is out, well, which got sold out, which is beautiful. There is a second
Nice.
part to that, which is called A Tale of Wonder. And I guess you're the first person to hear about this now because I haven't announced it yet. But A
Awesome.
Tale of Wonder, which is another poetry book, this time covering different themes within the poetry book. Origami is just one theme, but this poetry book is comprised of about 20, I think it's about 15 to 20 different poems within the
Mm.
book. So there's loads of different themes.
Okay.
And that one is 90% done. I'm just now looking at the cover, and I think two more poems to finish it off.
Okay.
Um, and then, funnily enough, now that you've said it, I have an idea which is about 40% done, called Justin Emerald is, and it's a weird name, but I'll explain it. So Justin Emerald is, and then it's dot 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 for ellipsis, and it's the origin story of the Grim Reaper.
Wow, that sounds very interesting.
Yeah. So that one is yeah, I can't give you any more on that just yet, but that
Sure.
is, yeah, that one's there definitely. And there are other one or two other ideas, but I'm not going to speak on them because because I'm not. Yeah, they're like 5%, 10%, so it's not worth speaking on it because I might get to 20% and say actually nah, it's not worth mentioning.
I understand. Wow, you definitely have a lot going on in there and some
Yeah,
interesting ideas as well, which is good.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I would tell you more about Sky Switch, but I can't. I think it's one of those. So Sky Switch is the name of the 90,000 word one. But yeah, at some point soon I'll be able to tell you a bit more about it.
I feel like um I need we need a little bit more time. It's so
Yeah,
unfortunate that we have to end in like 5 minutes or so
yeah,
because of the Zoom time. But it's good to at least speak to you for the first time. You're certainly
definitely.
an interesting man to speak to.
Same, same.
I like the fact that you're putting your creativity to use. It's not an easy thing. But the fact that you enjoy the process makes it worthwhile. So I'm happy for you for that.
Same for you as well. I think it's important that we all have stories to tell, and I feel like if we while we're here for a short time, it's not a long time. While we're here, we might as well sort of paint the canvas of life in the colors that
Mm,
we can, rather
of
than
course.
sort of keeping our paintbrushes locked away.
A friend of mine is a poet, and the first time I went out to see him, they were doing this thing when the poets
Yeah,
speak
instead
some
of clapping.
bars. Yeah, I was
Yeah,
like, I
yeah,
have to
yeah,
find a way to get that into this podcast slash interviews because I
yeah.
know that those moments will come. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so something that I would like, ultimately, one of the reasons why I'm doing this interviews is so that other people who are just starting out as writers or illustrators, they can sort of learn something about how to start or where to start and how to find information and all of that kind of stuff. So can you briefly tell us a little bit about all the different tools that you use to make your book happen? Let's say I have an idea in my mind. I don't know where to
Yeah.
start. Who do I even go to? What's the process? All of that kind of stuff. For you, what was that journey like? And what did you do?
Okay. So it's the self-published journey.
Yeah.
I found that was more hands-on for me because the published journey, they almost took care of a lot of things. But I prefer the self-published journey, to be honest with you.
Why
Um,
is that?
so there's so the self-published journey, the published one, my publishers were, funny enough, they were from America. So a lot of what they were doing was overseas, and I didn't have complete eyes on what was happening.
Okay.
So it was almost like I would send revisions and all of this stuff. They said they would market it in certain places, but I didn't have control of that because I wasn't in America.
Mm,
Whereas with the book over here, especially my recent one, Origami, because of the method I chose in which to sell it, I had the hands-on approach. So I was responsible for everything. And
okay.
that way you can sort of calculate everything that's gone into it.
Mm,
But what I would say for the people who are interested in sort of getting into the sphere of writing or any creative sphere is the first thing you said is noting down the idea. That the idea, the first step is the hardest. Once you get the idea down and you sort of formulate your idea, talk to people who are in the industry if you know anyone. Ask some people, ask your peers, and ask people, peers of peers, not necessarily people who will just considered to be yes men, for their opinion on certain things. I would say essentially you want exposure to your idea without too much exposure to your idea. That might sound confusing, but you want to tell people your idea, but you don't want to tell them in so much depth that that idea then may be taken.
Okay. Yeah.
So you want an idea and just get people's brief initial thoughts on whether they think it's realistic, whether they think it's a gap, a niche, or something like that. And
Mm,
even if they don't, there might be a burning feeling within you that you should have a sort of self-confidence to say, I think I'll be able to tell this story well,
mm,
you know,
mm,
whether it's through your writing, whether it's through your drawing, whether it's through any sort of medium of art. Um, so there's different ways you can do it. I would say educate yourself on the possibilities of how to release your artwork or how to release your form of art. For Origami, for instance, the book that I recently released, there was a website called Book Builder. It's a Canadian website, and it allows you to build your own sort of children's book with some set images there. So
okay.
I didn't have to go to a an artist or an illustrator. I selected the images from
Mm.
there. Funny enough, my daughter and I selected the images from there because the
Oh,
book is an ode to her.
okay.
And so she helped me pick some of the images out. And so that was a way in which I saved costs on that. I mean, there's the way the world is now, there are so many different tools that can help you out. It really is just about doing some research. Once you've got that idea,
Mm,
not think I'm going to put it out to the world immediately. Look at your options,
mm,
and there's usually loads and loads of different options and ways to help you out.
mm.
So yeah, I think the journey is not for the faint of heart as well, because if you are somebody that relies on a lot of other people to do things for you, it's going to be quite difficult.
Why do you
You know,
say
one of the things I've found is that I'm by nature, I'm not somebody who enjoys being online as much as I probably am.
okay?
So when you're self-published, unless you can afford a social media manager or something like that, you've got to be the person finding content, doing all of these things to get attention to your product.
True.
And that's something I've had to learn the hard way because, you know, I've had people tell me, yeah, the writing's great, but who knows about it?
Mm,
And I said, you know what, that's fair enough. You're right. Who knows about it? And it's because I have to do the work behind the scenes of let me promote this book, let me put this book here, let me speak about this book, let me
mm,
try and incorporate all of these things to get a wider attention. So
right.
luckily enough, with Origami, I sort of took into the concepts of what some of my friends were saying and what some of my peers were saying, and I managed to get it to a wider audience, which is why within a few hours I managed to sell it out, which was amazing for me, and that was an achievement I'll take with me for the rest of my life.
Wow.
Yeah,
Not many self-published authors are able to say they were able to sell out their books.
I know, and that's the thing, but that's just the start. So then then the other thing is keeping that level of hunger. So I've done it for the first one. There's a sort of expectation on my own shoulders, not on anyone else, but to want to do it for the second and from here on out. And
Mm,
then it's just thinking a way of keeping people involved as well.
right.
So yeah, it's not for the faint of heart, but it's a really rewarding journey.
I think everybody listening right now would want to ask, how did you sell out, or what did your friends tell you to do that helped you sell out your book, Origami?
Do you know what? It was one particular friend. Oh, it's actually two particular friends actually. My friend Mike and my friend Jay. They just said to me, you know, if you were to leave a legacy, how would you want to be remembered?
Mm,
I thought about that question for a while, before I went back to them. And they said, look, they were the ones who said, you know, the writing's good. You have some great ideas here. But how do you know, the way in which the world is now, you have an opportunity that you didn't before where you can market this into places or to places without having to physically be there.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, in regards to the process, I think we were on the question of how did I sell out Origami?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So funnily enough, I had the idea quite a while ago. I wrote the idea down and um, one of my colleagues, I actually showed them the idea, and she was like, wow, this is an incredible piece of work. This is incredible. It's with the age group, I targeted it at 3+, so 3 upwards. So it's really accessible.
Mm,
If anything, it's more accessible to sort of the younger years. And it's about a story of resilience. It's a poetry book about resilience and, determination and not giving up.
mm.
And through her contacts, she was able to actually get some of the book um, in its sort of beta mode available to be seen on the BBC.
Wow,
Yeah, so that was a big, big thing for me. So there were some people reading out a beta version of my book on the BBC.
that's crazy.
Yeah, which was great for promo as well.
Yeah.
Obviously I did quite a few things on that. And then since then it's just been sort of placing the book in its finished mode in different places, asking people for their opinions,
Mm,
off the cuff conversations, and just using all of that as ammunition in trying to help sell the book. So I started probably the marketing process 2 months before, I'd say about 2 months before actually putting the book out.
mm.
And so by the time it came out, everyone was sort of ready for it. They were waiting for it. It wasn't sort of, I've finished it, I'm putting it out now. I'm not yet at the point where I can just finish something and then just put it out and people are gonna flock to it. You know, I'm not Beyonce. I'm not I'm not
We're not
Beyonce.
there yet either. We're not
Yeah,
there yet.
exactly. That you've got to earn that sort of clout, I guess. And
Mm,
so in the meantime, it's just making sure that I'm consistent enough with my social media, I guess, even though that is a battle, as I previously mentioned, and just making sure that I just try and regularly keep people involved with what I'm doing, because it's easy to think sometimes of me that I'm not doing anything because I might not post it or I might not, but I am always working. It's just I
mm.
sometimes remember, oh, let people know you're working so they don't just do anything, sort of thing.
That's the social media world, man.
It is, to be honest, and the one thing I loved about Origami is I went with the old school approach. I literally got orders. I asked people to message me if they were interested in purchasing the book. Once they messaged me, I asked them to message me their address, and I sent out a personalized thank you note alongside a copy of the book.
Wow, that is so nice.
Yeah, it's a different approach. I wanted to do something slightly different to sort of capture an audience as well, because I think it is
Mm,
easy sometimes to put things online, and I have done with previous ebooks. But I thought, let me order copies of this book, and I'm gonna give you a physical note which you can always keep alongside the book, and it's there, it's yours,
mm,
So, and I do like that approach. I think the sort of approach of personalizing it and sort of cutting out the middleman is an approach that I really like.
mm. It's one that I aspire to as well, actually. So,
Yeah.
yeah. How
Oh,
did
okay.
you?
Yeah. So is that something that you've done with your works now? You looking aiming to cut out the middleman and just give it direct from seller to consumer?
It's not necessarily just about cutting out the middleman, but it's more about I want to see what the end consumer is thinking about it directly. That's what I
Yeah.
love about it.
Yeah.
And like you said, we're already in the digital age. So if you can, anything that you can do physically is going to be much more valuable because everybody is on their phone like 24/7. If you get to the point where if you actually get a letter from your mailbox, it's going to be much more bad. It'll be a lot more precious because it's not
Yeah.
common anymore to get those kinds of stuff. So
True. It's true.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm very curious to ask, you got your origami book.
Yeah.
Wait, the book is not about origami, right?
No. All right. So I love answering this question. So the idea behind origami is when you're making something, folding the paper in regards, so it's a metaphor. I viewed the folds as in difficulties in life.
Okay,
If you are
that's a beautiful
building,
perspective.
if you're making a flower, when you're doing your first few folds, you can't see the flower. You have no idea that the flower is there. It's not until you get to the end with all of the obstacles that you've sort of conquered where you get to see the beauty of the flower. And so the so at the end, the last line off the top of my head, or the last few lines at the end of the book, if you feel like giving up, you can always try again, because the beauty that we strive for is waiting for us at the end. That's the
Mm,
last few lines. And it's true. I mean, there have been several times, and the idea came to me because literally I was doing origami with some people, and I thought this could be a sort of, I've always loved the practice of origami. I think it's just so soothing, and so it's just such a lovely concept that these things can be made simply from just from just paper. It's insane. Um, but yeah, I just view them as difficulties and obstacles, and yeah, it's just a story of persistence and resilience. So yeah, that's
mm,
the whole idea behind origami.
okay. So I wanted to ask about the marketing now. I know you've talked about how you got a good connection, who got it onto the BBC, which is like
Yeah.
amazing already. But you
Yeah.
said you still had to do some more marketing.
Yes.
Okay.
So that is on social media, which was quite it can be quite arduous, the research, but it can be quite helpful as well. One of the things that I sort of became accustomed to, because I didn't have to do it for my ebooks, and I didn't really have to do it for my first one. Social media wasn't as prevalent as it is now. Is learning about the power of hashtags and timing of posts. There were certain hashtags and certain things that, if you do follow me, you'll see that I sort of try to have in every post that I do, to sort of build up a repertoire. So you get these opportunities for people in these groups, in these places of large numbers, to view your work, and view the quality that you put out there.
Mm,
And that has paid dividends. Um, I'm not somebody that's too fussed about follow accounts and stuff like that. It doesn't mean as much to me as it might to other people. I
mm,
think in some ways, if it means that my work can go out there and be viewed by a larger amount of people, and it impacts those people, then fair enough, I'll take it. But if it's just people adding to say I follow this guy, then it's just a pointless exercise for me, really. That's
mm,
what I think about. So yeah, a lot of that came from trying to find out about hashtagging, find out about different social groups, and looking for other opportunities to market, which might not necessarily be online. So there are things that I didn't do it for this book, but I definitely will be doing it for future books. Sort of putting a leaflet in the paper. So I contacted a few newspapers and asked about, if I was to have my book was to have a spread in your particular paper, how much would it cost? How long would it be there for? And such, which are all good ways of marketing as well.
that sounds expensive though, newspaper.
When I contacted the paper, it was £60 for a page cover. It was £60 for like a small page cover. So it's not as expensive as you think, which
For a
is
page cover, that's really good.
yeah, it really wasn't too bad. Um, Times may have changed. We have gone through a bit of a recession,
Wait,
but it
when
wasn't.
did you make this call?
This would have been for Sunday.
Oh, this
Um,
past Sunday.
no, no, sorry, not my book Sunday. Sorry.
Okay.
So this may have been a couple of years ago now, and yeah, it wasn't. I'd have to drag up the email, but it definitely wasn't more than £100. It definitely wasn't more than £100.
Mm.
So it seemed like a reasonable offer, because I think, in an ideal world, I'd love to have my work sort of plastered over billboards. But billboards are, yeah, that's when you're talking about, wow, that's expensive, sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
and then using the power of your social circle as well. You can't expect, one thing I've learned is you can't expect people, just because they're your friends or family, to post your stuff. But you can always ask. You can
Mm.
always ask and say, this is something that I've done. Would you be interested in posting it. And fortunately enough, I've got quite a sort of reactive group of people that sort of will say, okay, yeah, fair enough, and they'll post it, and then they'll speak about it on top of it. So it's really good.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome. All
definitely.
right, Mr. Kobe. I've taken a lot of your time, and there's been so many valuable gems you've dropped in this conversation, and I
Thank you.
really appreciate it. I learned a lot from it as well, to be honest with you.
Thank
So,
you, man. Thank you.
but I hope that we can speak again. It would be great to have you back again and see how you're
Definitely.
getting on and those kinds of things. So,
And I look
um,
forward to seeing the platform grow. Definitely.
thank you. I appreciate it. As our oh man, I need to do so. I need to think about how I'm going to honor you as our very first guest on this thing. I have to think about it. So, but I'll
I'll come
definitely
back
be
to
into.
episode 20 or something.
That's an idea. That's an
Yeah.
idea. I'll try and rush everybody so that we can get there.
All right then, man.
Cool. Thank you so much again, Kobe.
No problem. Pleasure.
Take care for
See you
now.
later.
Bye.
Bye.